Now we are going to get into the basic components of the retina. If you'll recall, the retina is a layer of cells located towards the very back of the eye. The retina is derived from the same tissue as the brain and is actually considered part of the brain. It contains our visual receptors called photoreceptors, which send visual signals to the rest of the brain, and it has a quite complex layered organization. Here we have a diagram illustrating a close-up view of the retina. On the left, we can see the light that is coming into the eye that has already passed the cornea, lens, and through the vitreous humor. The light will actually continue through these layers of the retina and straight to the very back of the eyeball before much processing of the light takes place. Once the light hits the back of the eyeball, it will reflect off of it and bounce back the opposite direction, back towards the layers of the retina. The first layer consists of the rod and cone receptors. These are the photoreceptors and are the first cells to respond to the presence of light. Once these rods and cones are activated by the light, they will generate a neural signal into the next layer of cells, the bipolar cells, and then onto the ganglion cells. The horizontal cells and the amacrine cells help to modulate the signals being passed along the retina. Finally, the signals leave the eye via the axons of the ganglion cells, which make up the optic nerve. So, receptor cells are not specific to the eye. They are any cell that changes its activity in response to energy from the environment. All of our senses depend on various receptor cells to translate what we taste, smell, feel, hear, and see into neural signals that our brain can translate into the experience we have. They are different from most other cells in that typical cells receive information from other cells alone and not from energy from the environment. Photoreceptors are receptor cells that are specifically sensitive to light. They contain photopigments, and light caught by a photoreceptor changes the chemical composition of the photopigment in a photoreceptor. That, in turn, changes the activity of the cell. This process, in which environmental energy is turned into neural activity, is referred to as transduction. Transduction changes the flow of the electrical current within a cell and is a process unique to receptor cells. Here we have a picture taken by an electron microscope of the photoreceptors of the retina. As you can see, the rods are actually rod-shaped and the cones cone-shaped. Since the signal from the retina needs to eventually leave the eye to reach the rest of the brain, we have what is referred to as a blind spot on the back of each eye. This is referred to as the optic disc and is the region where the optic nerve fibers exit the eye. It literally is a blind spot because we do not have any photoreceptors in this region. Let's take a look at a demonstration of the blind spot of the eye. We are actually going to align the image of the black circle with the blind spot in your right eye so that it completely disappears. First, you need to align your face so that you are right in front of the cross. Move your face so that it's, about 1.5 feet away from your computer screen. How far away you need to be will really depend on how big your computer screen is. And then close your left eye so that only your right eye is open. Make sure you are looking at the cross with your right eye. Did the circle disappear? If not, you may need to move a bit closer or further away from the cross to make it happen. Play around with it until you get the image of the circle just right in your blind spot, which is oriented about 20 degrees off of the fovea. And remember, the fovea is where you are focusing your vision. Our perceptual system is very good at masking the blind spot in each of our eyes. One reason we don't ever notice it is because we have two eyes. There are neurons associated with the same region of the visual field in each eye. So if that portion of the visual field lands on the blind spot of one eye, the other eye will catch it. That is why we needed to close one eye in the blind spot demo. Another reason we never notice our blind spots is because our eyes are constantly moving. Therefore, the visual stimuli don't always stay in the blind spot for very long. Also, our perceptual system is very good at filling things in for us. In other words, our perceptual system will make us see something that isn't really there. And it does this all of the time. If you were able to make the yellow circle disappear in the demo, you likely noticed that you didn't suddenly have a big hole in that spot where your vision was gone. Rather, the place where the yellow circle had been was filled in with more of the blue background. This is an example of the perceptual system filling in information for us. There are no receptors in that spot to detect the blue background. Perceptual processes fill it in based on our expectancies and experiences. The perceptual system ignores the absence of information and treats the visual area associated with the blind spot as a continuation of its surrounding. We know this too because there are inputs from the area surrounding the blind spot that converge into the visual cortex of the brain. Another example of our perceptual system filling in information for us is the phenomenon of subjective contours. Subjective contours are perceived edges that are not the result of physical luminance differences. In other words, there is no physical edge there, yet we still see one. In this case here, we perceive the Pac-Man shapes as complete circles with a white triangle on top. However, if we cover up the Pac-Man shapes, we now see that the white triangle has disappeared. We actually have neurons that respond both to real and to illusory edges. In other words, the experience as demonstrated by the firing of those neurons is to see edges regardless of whether or not there is a real edge in front of us. Another example of filling in is with amodal completion. Amodal completion is implicit perceptual completion of an object. Here, we perceive an orange square covering up a complete black circle. We don't perceive 3/4 of a circle, which is what our eyes are really seeing. It's just another example of how easily we can take for granted all that our perceptual systems do for us.